The training station hung in the black void of space like a great metal wheel. Below it, the planet 442b burned with red and orange light. Inside the station, 14 young cadets from across the galaxy prepared for their daily training exercise. They came from different worlds and different species, but they all wore the same gray uniforms of the Galactic Council's military academy. Daniel Cross stood at attention in the observation room. He was the human representative at the academy, and his presence still raised eyebrows among the other instructors. Humans had only reached the stars 3 decades ago. They were still considered new to galactic society, and many older species did not believe humans had what it took to serve in the military. Daniel was tall and muscular. His dark eyes watched everything. He had been a soldier on Earth for 15 years before volunteering for this post. He understood what it meant to protect people. He understood what it meant to face danger and never back down. Commander Vex stood beside him. Vex was a species made of living crystal. His body glowed with soft blue light, and his voice sounded like wind chimes when he spoke. Vex had supervised the training at this station for 5 years. He respected Daniel more than most beings did. He knew that humanity's value could not be measured by how long they had existed in space. "Today's exercise is critical," Vex said. "The cadets will practice defending a transport ship against mock pirates. It will teach them how to work together under pressure." The 14 cadets moved into the training chamber. They were with their hard crystalline skin. They were with their multiple arms and quick reflexes. They were with their large eyes and thin bodies. And there was Jennifer Grant, the human cadet. She had joined the academy 6 months ago and had proven herself to be quick-thinking and brave. The mock attack began on schedule. Sensors showed enemy ships approaching. The cadets moved to their stations. They began to follow their training protocols. Everything seemed to be going as planned. Then the alarms changed. The sound was different. The readings on the screens became chaotic and wild. "That is not the exercise program," Vex said. His crystalline body began to glow brighter. That meant he was anxious. Daniel moved forward and looked at the readings. His heart went cold. The enemy ships were real. They were not following the pattern of the mock attack. They were attacking with real weapons. "Lock down the training chamber," Daniel commanded, but it was too late. The walls of the training chamber shook. Explosions echoed through the station. Red emergency lights flashed on. The cadets shouted in fear and confusion. Through the observation window, Daniel saw the attack ships descend toward the station like hunting birds. They were painted black and red. On their hulls was the symbol of the Scorpion Syndicate. These were not soldiers. These were pirates, and they had come for the cadets. "Get them out," Daniel shouted, but the doors to the training chamber would not open. The power system had been damaged by the first attack. Daniel ran toward the emergency exit. Vex followed him. They raced through the corridors of the station. Behind them, they could hear the sound of the pirate ships docking. They could hear the footsteps of armed soldiers. When they reached the training chamber again, the doors had been blown open by the pirates. Armed scorpions poured through, their weapons raised. These creatures were large and powerful, with hard skin and multiple eyes. They were bred for violence. They lived for conquest and profit. "Stand down," one of the pirates ordered. His voice was loud and harsh. "The cadets are ours now. You do not fight, you do not resist, or you all die." Vex tried to move forward, but a blast from a pirate weapon struck him. His crystalline body shattered in 100 places. He fell to the ground, smoking and broken. He was not dead, but he could not fight anymore. Daniel pulled Vex behind a metal barrier. He wanted to fight. Every part of him wanted to attack these pirates and drive them back. But he had only his bare hands, and they had weapons that could burn through steel. The 14 cadets were already being taken by force into the pirate transport. Jennifer Grant tried to resist. A pirate struck her with the butt of his weapon. She fell. "No," Daniel said, but his voice made no difference. The pirates loaded the cadets into their ship like cargo. The transport sealed its doors and began to move away from the station. Daniel stood up. His fists were clenched. His jaw was tight. Around him, he could hear station alarms and explosions. The Scorpion Syndicate was taking what they wanted, and no one was stopping them. When the pirate ships were gone, the station filled with silence. Medical teams rushed to help the wounded. Daniel stayed in the observation room, watching the pirate ships disappear into the darkness of space. The 14 cadets were being taken to the Scorpion mothership. That ship was hours away, hidden somewhere in the asteroid field beyond the planet. Within an hour, Daniel stood before the Galactic Council. They appeared on holographic screens in a large conference room. These were the leaders of 1,000 worlds and 1,000,000 species. They represented beings that had been traveling through space for thousands of years. "We will negotiate with the Scorpion Syndicate," the council leader said. She was a tall being with skin that flickered like flames. "The pirates want payment for the cadets. We have resources. We can resolve this through diplomacy." "That will take days," Daniel said. "Maybe weeks. Anything can happen to those cadets in that time." "We are aware of the situation, Lieutenant Cross," the council leader replied. "The Scorpions are criminals, but they are also reasonable. They will not harm the cadets as long as we negotiate in good faith. A military rescue would be too dangerous." Daniel felt anger rise inside him. These council members had never been soldiers. They had never had to watch someone they cared about being taken away. They thought everything could be solved with words and credits. "Humans have a reputation for being reckless," another council member said. "We cannot allow emotion to drive our decisions. We will handle this through proper channels." Daniel left the conference room without asking permission. He knew what he had to do. The council would negotiate while the cadets suffered in pirate hands. That was not acceptable to him. That would never be acceptable. He went to the equipment storage room. He knew the access codes. He knew how to use every weapon and tool the station had. He began to gather what he would need. A soldier could not save 14 people from a massive pirate ship, but Daniel Cross had never been a soldier who accepted that the Scorpion mothership was the size of a small city. Daniel's shuttle looked like an insect flying toward a mountain. He guided the small craft through the darkness, using passive sensors to avoid detection. The ship hung in space like a dark fortress, covered in weapons platforms and defense towers. Daniel knew he could not dock at the main bay. Too many guards, too much security. Instead, he steered toward a cargo section on the lower side of the ship. That area would have fewer sensors and less protection. It was a gambling move, but Daniel understood that every part of this rescue would be a gamble. He found an opening in the cargo section. The pirate ship was so large that they did not monitor every entrance. His shuttle slipped inside like a ghost. He landed in a dark hangar filled with stolen goods and forgotten supplies. No one saw him arrive. Daniel left the shuttle with nothing but his military-issued weapon, a knife, a small hacking device, and a vial of knockout gas. He had memorized the basic layout of Scorpion motherships from his military training files. He knew they were built with similar designs. Cargo sections connected to maintenance tunnels. Maintenance tunnels led to the heart of the ship. The hangar was silent and empty. His footsteps echoed in the darkness. Daniel moved forward with his weapon ready. He was prepared to fight, but he hoped to reach the detention block without firing a shot. Gunfire would alert the entire ship. Stealth was his only advantage. He found a maintenance access panel and used his hacking device to open it. The panel sparked and clicked. Behind it lay a narrow tunnel that smelled of metal and oil. Daniel climbed inside and began to crawl forward. For hours, he moved through the ship's body like a virus moving through blood. He used the ventilation system to cross large open spaces. He avoided guard patrols by studying their movement patterns and predicting where they would go. He used his knowledge of alien biology to understand why certain creatures stationed themselves in certain areas. Soldiers had better night vision, so they guarded the dark passages. Were slower but stronger, so they guarded the main corridors. He came across his first patrol in a lower maintenance corridor. 2 soldiers were walking toward him, their multiple arms carrying plasma rifles. Daniel pressed himself against the wall in the shadows, the past without seeing him. Their eyes were excellent, but they were looking forward, not at the darkness around them. Then he found a guard sleeping in a small room off the main corridor. The creature was large and covered in thick scales. Daniel recognized him as a species known for being slow and stupid. Daniel moved silently into the room and used his knockout gas. The guard slept deeper. Daniel took the guard's uniform and security badge. It would not fool anyone for long, but it might get him past a quick checkpoint. As he moved deeper into the ship, Daniel began to understand the layout. The detention block was in the center of the ship, protected by layers of security. The cafeterias and barracks were on the outer rings. The command center was at the top. The pirate ship was designed like most military vessels, with important locations in the middle and soldiers scattered throughout the outer sections. Daniel heard voices ahead. He stopped and listened. The voices were speaking in Scorpion, a harsh language full of growls and clicking sounds. Daniel did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. The pirates were confident. They believed their prize was safe. He moved forward and saw a checkpoint. 3 pirates sat at a desk, monitoring a security screen. Behind them was a locked door with a red warning light. The detention block was through that door. Daniel put on his stolen uniform and walked forward as if he belonged there. One of the pirates looked up at him. "New assignment?" the pirate asked. Daniel nodded without speaking. He raised his stolen security badge. The pirate scanned it with a device. The screen beeped. For a moment, nothing happened. Daniel prepared to fight. Then the pirate waved him through. "The detention cells are on level 3, the pirate said. "Watch yourself down there. The prisoners are getting restless." Daniel walked through the door. Behind him, he heard the pirates laugh. They had no idea they had just let a human soldier walk directly into the heart of their operation. The detention block was a maze of corridors and locked cells. Daniel could see the cadets through transparent barriers. They were in crystal-sealed chambers. They were in biolocked stasis fields that prevented their multiple arms from moving. They were in pressure chambers that kept them calm and unconscious. And Jennifer Grant was in a standard energy cell, awake and alert, watching the door with hope and fear in her eyes. Daniel had found them, but he had also discovered the truth of his situation. The security systems around each cell were different, designed specifically for each species' strengths and weaknesses. Trying to free them one at a time would trigger alarms. Trying to free them all at once would be impossible. He stood in the shadows of the detention corridor, looking at the 14 young cadets he had come to rescue. They were trapped behind barriers that no single person could break. And somewhere in this massive ship, thousands of armed soldiers were waiting for any excuse to attack. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them and began to think. The council had said the rescue was impossible. The odds said he could not win. But Daniel had learned long ago that impossible was just another word for not yet tried. He moved back toward the corridor entrance. He had to find the power distribution center. If he could Daniel found the power distribution center on level 6. It was guarded by 2 Scorpion soldiers, but they were sitting and drinking something that smelled like fermented metal. They were bored. This was a routine station that no one ever attacked. Daniel used the shadows and the ventilation system to get above them. He dropped down behind one guard and used his knife. The guard fell without making a sound. The second guard turned, but Daniel was faster. A sharp blow to the head and both soldiers were down. He did not kill them. He had killed before in combat, but these soldiers were not his enemies. They were workers doing a job. Daniel took what he needed and moved forward. The power center was a massive room filled with humming machines and glowing screens. Daniel understood that he needed to cause chaos without destroying the entire ship. He did not want to kill innocent people. He wanted to create confusion that would force the guards away from the detention block. He started small. He cut the power to the lights in the detention corridor. Then he overloaded the cooling system in 3 adjacent sections. Alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed. Automated systems announced emergency situations in calm, mechanical voices. Guards began to move through the ship. Daniel watched on the security cameras as soldiers ran toward the emergencies he was creating. He started fires in cargo sections. He flooded corridors with steam. He made it seem like the ship was under attack from multiple enemies. The Scorpion leadership believed they were being invaded. Daniel used the security system to broadcast fake messages. He made enemy locations appear on military screens. The chaos grew. Soldiers moved away from the detention block, called to defend other sections of the ship. Daniel ran back toward the detention cells. The alarms were still screaming. The cadets were awake and afraid, not understanding what was happening. He reached the detention corridor and found it almost empty. Only 2 guards remained, and they were confused about their orders. Daniel moved quickly. He used his hacking device on the first cell. The cadets stared at him with wide eyes. They did not recognize him as human at first. They only saw a soldier in a stolen Scorpion uniform moving toward them in the chaos. "Move," Daniel commanded. He pointed toward the corridor. "Go to the maintenance shaft, turn left and run, do not stop." They understood. They ran. Daniel moved to the next cell. They were different. They were aggressive, ready to fight. Daniel held up his hands. "I am here to free you," he said. I am human. My name is Daniel Cross. I came alone to bring you home. The lead looked at him with all of his eyes. For a moment he did not believe. Then he nodded. Daniel freed them and they ran toward the maintenance shaft. They were still in their pressure chambers. Daniel had to be careful. If he released them too quickly, their bodies could be damaged by the change in pressure. He adjusted the chamber controls slowly, carefully, watching the levels decrease on the screen. It took 5 precious minutes. 5 minutes when the chaos he created was beginning to fail. Finally, the cadets could breathe the normal air. They staggered out of their chambers, weak and confused. Daniel helped them toward the exit. Finally, he reached Jennifer Grant. She was on her feet, her eyes locked on his face. "Lieutenant Cross," she said, "you came alone." "Yes," Daniel replied. "No time to explain, we have to move." He worked on the energy cell lock. The barrier flickered and died. Jennifer ran out and grabbed his arm. "The others," she said, "did you free them?" "All of them," Daniel replied. "They are ahead of us. We are moving toward the docking bay. That is where we escape." Jennifer nodded. She was trained for crisis. She understood what to do. But as they ran toward the maintenance shaft, alarms changed again. The emergency sounds became sharper. The Scorpion leadership had realized the truth. This was not an outside attack. This was sabotage from within the ship. "Lock down the detention block," a voice commanded over the speakers. "Seal all exits. The saboteur is still inside the ship." Heavy metal doors began to close. Daniel grabbed Jennifer and ran harder. They reached the maintenance shaft just as doors slammed shut behind them. The shaft was narrow and dark, but it led upward, and upward was toward freedom. Behind them, Daniel heard the sound of soldiers entering the detention corridor. They were coming fast now. They knew where he was. They would catch him if they stayed on this course. Jennifer was ahead of him, climbing the shaft. She was fast, but she was tired. Daniel looked back down the shaft. He could see lights. He could see soldiers below them raising their weapons. He could shoot. He had his weapon. He could hold them off from here and give Jennifer time to reach the others and escape. "Keep moving," he told her. "Get to the docking bay, get all the cadets on the shuttle, launch immediately." "What about you?" Jennifer asked. "I will catch up," Daniel lied. He turned and aimed his weapon down the shaft. The first shot echoed through the tunnel. The soldiers below dove for cover. Daniel fired again and again, forcing them to stay down, forcing them to move carefully. Jennifer hesitated. Jennifer Grant ran through the maintenance tunnel with the weight of destiny on her shoulders. Behind her, the other cadets followed. They moved fast despite their hard bodies. They were quick with their multiple arms, pulling themselves forward. They were slower, recovering from the pressure chambers, but they pushed forward through fear and will. She could hear the shots below. Daniel was buying them time. Every second he fought was a second they gained. She had to make sure those seconds meant something. The tunnel led upward and forward toward the main docking bay. Jennifer had studied the station blueprints during her academy training. She knew the route. She led the cadets through passages that twisted and turned, taking them deeper into the ship, but also moving them away from the immediate danger. Then she heard footsteps ahead. Guards were coming from the other direction. They had anticipated this route. Jennifer stopped the group. She held up her hand. "We go left here," she said, pointing to a smaller maintenance access. "Follow me." They moved into the narrower shaft. It was harder to navigate. It meant taking a longer route to the docking bay, but it meant avoiding the soldiers ahead. Back in the main shaft, Daniel was fighting for his life. The Scorpion soldiers were coming in waves. He had killed 3 of them, but there were always more. His ammunition was running low. His shoulder was bleeding from a plasma bolt that had grazed him. His breath came hard and fast. But he was still alive, and his training was keeping him ahead of death by narrow margins. He moved upward, fighting and climbing at the same time. He could not stay in one place. If he did, the soldiers would overwhelm him with numbers. He had to keep moving, had to keep them off balance. A Scorpion soldier managed to get close. The creature was huge, with thick armor and powerful arms. It grabbed Daniel's weapon and tried to rip it away. Daniel let the weapon go. He was faster. He used the soldier's momentum against it, rolling and kicking, driving the creature backward into the shaft wall. The creature fell. Daniel kept climbing. His lungs burned. His muscles screamed. He was not sure how much longer he could continue. But he knew the cadets were depending on him. Every second he delayed the soldiers was a second Jennifer and the others used to get closer to escape. Meanwhile, Jennifer had reached a central hub in the ship. It was a large, round chamber where multiple corridors met. The docking bays were on the other side. She looked at her group. They were holding up well. They were ready for anything, but they were weak. One of them, a female named, was limping badly. Jennifer made a decision. She could go fast and reach the docking bay in minutes, or she could go slow and keep the group together. If she abandoned the weak, they would be captured or killed. That was not acceptable. "We stay together," she commanded. "Move forward but help those who are struggling." A cadet moved to support. The group moved forward as one unit. The docking bay was coming into view. They could see the landing platform where Daniel's stolen shuttle sat waiting, its engines glowing with readiness for departure. Then alarms changed again. The ship's communication system announced a new emergency. The power to the docking bay was failing. The magnetic locks that held ships in place were becoming unstable. Any minute now, the entire bay could lose integrity. Jennifer understood what had happened. Daniel had not just fought the soldiers. He had kept attacking the ship's systems, creating more chaos, more confusion, more destruction. He was burning the entire ship down around them if that is what it took to get them to safety. She led the cadets into the docking bay. The floor was shaking. Warning lights flashed everywhere. The shuttle's ramp was open, waiting. "Move," Jennifer shouted. "Get on the shuttle." The cadets ran forward. Some moved slowly due to injury, some moved with fear, but they all moved. They were last, protecting the others. Jennifer counted them as they boarded. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. One was missing. A younger male named Ren. He had fallen behind, unable to keep pace with the group. Jennifer saw him struggling in the hallway. Behind him, Scorpion soldiers were coming. They were moving fast, knowing they were running out of time before the docking bay lost integrity. Jennifer ran back. She had been trained to help cadets in crisis. She had been trained to be a soldier. She grabbed Ren's arm and pulled him forward. "Come on," she said. "We are almost there." Ren moved, driven by will and adrenaline. They reached the shuttle ramp as the first soldier opened fire. Plasma bolts burned past them, hitting the shuttle's exterior. Alarms screamed. The ramp began to close. Jennifer pulled Ren up the ramp. He fell forward onto the shuttle deck. She was right behind him. "Take off," she shouted to the pilot. It was an automated system Daniel had programmed before he left his shuttle. The ramp sealed. The shuttle's engines powered up. The magnetic locks were failing. The ship was coming apart. The shuttle broke free from its mooring and shot forward, leaving the docking bay just as a massive section of the bay ceiling collapsed behind them. Inside the shuttle, 14 cadets lay gasping for breath. They were alive. They were safe. They were free from the Scorpion mothership. But one of their rescuers was still inside that dying ship. Daniel Cross was still fighting, still climbing, still moving. The shuttle carrying the 14 cadets entered the training station's docking bay. Inside, medical teams were waiting. They had been monitoring the shuttle's transmission. They knew what had happened. They knew that a single human had somehow freed all the cadets from a massive pirate ship. Commander Vex was there despite his injuries. His crystalline body still bore the cracks from the pirate attack, but his mind was sharp and his determination was strong. When he saw the cadets emerge from the shuttle, alive and relatively unharmed, his body glowed brighter with relief and joy. Jennifer Grant walked out with Ren supported on her shoulder. She was bleeding from multiple wounds. She was exhausted, but she was walking with the bearing of a soldier who had accomplished the impossible. "Where is Lieutenant Cross?" Vex asked. Jennifer's face became hard. "Still on the Scorpion ship. He stayed behind to hold off the soldiers while we escaped." Vex turned toward the Galactic Council's communication center. He knew what he had to do. He had to tell them what one human had accomplished. The council members appeared on the holographic screens. Their expressions changed when they saw the 14 cadets alive and safe. They looked at each other, confused and surprised. "Commander Vex," the council leader said, "how is this possible? We were still negotiating with the Scorpions. How did the cadets escape?" "They were rescued," Vex replied, "by one human soldier." The room became silent. The council members stared at the hologram screen with expressions of disbelief. Vex continued. "Lieutenant Daniel Cross went to the Scorpion mothership alone. He infiltrated the ship without detection. He reached the detention block where the cadets were held in maximum security. He freed all 14 cadets from cells that were specifically designed to contain their species. Then he held off an entire army of soldiers while the cadets escaped. "That is impossible," one council member said. "One soldier cannot accomplish such a feat." And yet, Vex replied, he did exactly that. Back on the Scorpion mothership, Daniel was still moving. He had reached the command deck. He had accessed the ship's computer system and was uploading a virus that would damage the pirate ship's weapons and defense systems. The Scorpions had spent years stealing from merchants and capturing people. Now the galaxy would strike back. Daniel could hear soldiers outside the command deck door. They were trying to cut through. He had minutes at best. But the virus was uploading. Once it finished, this ship would be helpless. Other military vessels could arrive and disable the Scorpions before they could harm anyone else. The door was glowing red from the soldiers' cutting equipment. Daniel finished uploading the virus and turned to the emergency escape pod. He ran toward it, activated the launch sequence, and climbed inside just as the command deck door exploded inward. Plasma bolts burned the space where he had been standing moments before, but Daniel was already sealed inside the escape pod. The launch sequence engaged. The pod shot away from the mothership like a bullet propelled by explosive force. Behind him, the Scorpion mothership systems began to fail. The virus was spreading. Weapons went offline. Engines lost power. The great ship that had seemed so invincible began to break apart. Days later, a Galactic Council military vessel found the escape pod drifting in space. Daniel was alive. He was badly injured, his body covered in burns and cuts, his strength nearly gone. But he was alive. When he was brought back to the training station, the entire facility came to greet him. The 14 cadets stood in a line of honor. Medical teams rushed to treat his injuries. Commander Vex stood at the front, his crystalline body glowing with pride and respect. "You did the impossible, Daniel Cross," Vex said. "You risked everything for beings from different species. You showed that humanity is capable of greatness." Daniel tried to stand, but his wounds made it too painful. He sat instead. Jennifer Grant stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "You are a true soldier," she said. "You came alone to save us. You did not leave any of us behind." The 14 cadets approached him one by one. The bowed. The placed their arms across their chests in salute. The touched their foreheads in respect. They had been saved by someone they had underestimated. They had been protected by a human. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. They wanted Daniel to testify before them. 3 days later, when he had recovered enough to walk, Daniel stood before the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. "Lieutenant Daniel Cross," the council leader said, "you are accused of going against the direct orders of this council. You are accused of putting yourself in danger without authorization. What do you have to say for yourself?" "I have nothing to say," Daniel replied, "except that 14 people are alive because I did what was right instead of what I was told." The council members looked at each other. Then the leader spoke again. "We have decided that you will not be punished. Instead, we are presenting you with the highest honor that the Galactic Council can bestow. We are making you a hero of the galaxy, and we are proposing a new military policy." The leader paused and looked at the other council members. They all nodded. "We propose that humans be given equal standing in the Galactic Council's military operations. Your species has proven itself brave and resourceful. You have proven that you are willing to sacrifice for others. These are the qualities we need in our defenders." Daniel bowed his head. He thought of Earth, the world he had come from. He thought of all the humans who were still working to find their place among the stars. This moment would change things. This rescue would show the galaxy what humanity was capable of. Commander Vex stood beside him, his crystalline body still glowing with pride. The Galactic Council stood as well, honoring the human soldier who had done the impossible. Outside the council chambers, stars burned in the darkness of space. Humanity had come to those stars only 3 decades ago. They were the species in the galaxy. They had the fewest ships, the smallest military, the least experience. But they had something else. They had the willingness to protect others at any cost. They had the determination to never abandon those who needed them. They had Daniel Cross, a single soldier who had walked into darkness and brought back 14 young cadets who would grow up to defend the galaxy. The age of human obscurity was ending. The age of human prominence was beginning, and it had started with one man who believed that courage and will could overcome any obstacle. One man who had looked at impossible odds and said, "I will do this anyway." One man who was human. Daniel stood with Jennifer Grant and the other cadets and looked out at the stars. He thought about the journey that had brought him here and the journey that lay ahead. He thought about what his actions had meant, not just for those 14 cadets, but for his entire species. Humanity's place in the galaxy was no longer a question. It had been proven. It had been earned with sacrifice and bravery. And it had been delivered by one soldier named Daniel Cross, who understood that true strength is not measured in firepower, but in the willingness to risk everything to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Survival against impossible odds. The cadets watched through the shuttle's rear viewport as the mothership receded into the distance. They saw explosions bloom across its hull as Daniel continued his rampage of destruction inside. Jennifer pressed her hand against the viewport. She could not believe he had come alone. She could not believe he had saved them all. Now it was time to hope that he had also saved himself. "Go," Daniel shouted. "That is an order." She climbed, her feet disappeared from his sight. Daniel kept firing, kept the soldiers at bay. He bought her seconds and then minutes. He bought the cadets time to reach the shuttle. Daniel Cross stood in a dark shaft, alone again, facing an army of enemies. He had freed the 14 cadets. Now it was time to make sure they escaped alive, even if it cost him everything. Throughout the detention block, if he could create confusion and emergencies, maybe in that chaos he could save them. Daniel Cross had no plan for victory. He only had the determination to succeed or die trying. Impossible. He prepared his weapons. He charged his equipment. He uploaded the location coordinates of the Scorpion mothership into the navigation system of a small shuttle. Then he walked toward the docking bay. Behind him, no one noticed. Ahead of him lay the darkness of space and the most dangerous journey of his life. He was one human soldier going after 14 cadets being held by thousands of armed pirates. The odds were impossible. The chance of success was almost zero. But Daniel Cross had always believed that courage and will could overcome numbers and firepower. It was time to prove that belief. It was time to show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of.